Welcome to the Ask the Expert video series. This series is an extension of the Farm Tech Group's long-running print column in which industry experts answer common quality and regulatory questions from the industry. This video series expands on topic areas to include development and manufacturing concerns to help those working in the industry better understand biopharmaceutical requirements. We hope you enjoy the discussion.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to meet you all to Ask the Experts. I'm Siegfried Schmidt. I'm Vice President Technical with Parexel, and I'm here today with my good colleague, Sue Schneep.
Hi, Siegfried. I'm a distinguished fellow with Nelson Labs, and we're here to talk about biologics. What question did we get this time?
The question that came in is from a biologics manufacturer, and they ask that because they saw new announcements, guidance from FDA, publication from USP, and from the European regulators affecting supply chain, and critical medicines in the biologics field. So they are wondering, how do these announcements, these new thought processes affect what they are doing? So would you like to share some of your thoughts before I jump in?
Yes, Siegfried, I think it's interesting that these all kind of came out at the same time and came together. With the USP, what they've done is released methods for biologics, and then but they didn't put specifications with them. So I think this is an effort to help biologic manufacturers, because as we know, this is a rapidly growing field, right? And it's moving fast. So this should help people in terms of their CMC sections, right, with methods, and then they can set the specs depending on the product they're developing. So that's one way that USP is beginning to move forward approval of these products, which are critical medicines. Now let's bite off from my perspective, the EMA and their Critical Medicines Act. What they announced was an agreement for their Critical Medicines Act that came out in 2025. So now they have agreement, and you probably know this better than I, but this act was more around controlling drug shortages and eliminating some of those roadblocks like supplier. And I think that butts on biologics, because what I'm seeing is there may be critical elements that a company needs to manufacture a biologic that might be available from only one source. And that's kind of a danger when you talk about if that supplier has a problem, everybody has a problem. And then the FDA, they put out a guidance, and it is just a draft, and it's leveraging prior knowledge in the development of human gene therapy products incorporating genome editing. So what they're going after is being able to use, instead of establishing like your own holistic platform, you can reference studies and information that has been published to enhance your CMC section or your filing. So all of those three things are coming together in an effort, it seems, to move the biological, the gene therapy, the ATMP platform forward quickly. And I'll just make a note that the FDA guidance is just a draft, and it's still out for comment. And people have until September 1st, 2026 to comment.
Yes, Sue. I think first of all, we need to say that anyone can comment on guidance. And that is not only in the US, that is a typical thing with all the regulators. So the company who asked us this question, they may be interested, in fact, to put in their opinion and their concerns, their suggestions. Why not? It's all welcome, and it will all be read. So, so this is about the process as such. But what I would like to talk a little bit about is what are the intentions by the regulators? Because what you already mentioned, Sue, is that these products are typically life-saving products. When we look at biologics, these are products that can often cure a disease. So these are really products that not only the patients want to see urgently, but also the regulators are supporting the industry in getting them to market. So this is the one aspect, actually having availability of these products. But not only that, as you also mentioned, is there is a supply chain behind it because you cannot make everything in-house. You need suppliers. And it may be for some of these raw materials, excipients, whatever it is, they go into this, it may be very difficult to get hold of them. Not only that, some may be very difficult to transport. So there are many different aspects to this. And some of the technical ideas are to perhaps manufacture close to where your patients are. So we have distributed manufacture, and there are lots of modern ideas that come together from industry, but also from the regulatory side. And all this is very promising, wouldn't you say?
I would. I liked your comment on um, um, putting in comments on the regulation. I think people should also know that works with the USP too. So don't just limit yourself to only the draft guidance of FDA, but look at the USP methodology also, because they also submit, you can also submit comments to them about the proposed technology that they're talking about. Um, I think it's important, it's a tricky area, right, Siegfried, because you've got these advanced products that are life-saving, and yet you're limited because the knowledge may be limited to a few people or a few firms. And I think that's where the FDA draft guidance is trying to expand by allowing companies to use information that's previously been published if it fits their product to be able to expedite approval of these life-saving methods.
And coming back perhaps also to the manufacturing, because yes, you could, for example, traditionally file for a product in the US and then you file in Europe and maybe other jurisdictions. And you may typically have a product that you start making in the US and then you simply export, you ship it over to other markets. That's not always an option with biologics, especially with those
Yes.
that you mentioned, the cell and gene therapy products, which may not be conducive to such shipments. And something that all the regulators like to see now is to have manufacture much more within the market where they are regulating, which may mean, as I mentioned before, with this distributed manufacturing, that we are probably getting away more and more from these centralized large production facilities to more smaller, closer to the patient facilities where we have shorter supply chains. But of course, on the other hand, how do we get all our suppliers to supply us to these locations rather than to just one? So there are many aspects that need to be considered. And coming back to the question from our listener, it's important that companies provide their input to the regulators because they want to hear what is feasible and what is practical.
Yes. And I think in some cases, the manufacturer can only take the biologics so far, and some of the manufacturing process might actually have to be conducted in a hospital clinical setting, right, for administration to the patient. And that also requires information to be shared if you have a few, like the last step of the formulation for the product has to be done at the hospital. It might be combining, some lyophilized version and, purified water or water for injection, right? So I think that there's that element too that has to be considered in all of this. It's, as I said, it's rapidly moving and changing.
And I think the very positive aspect here is that it's not simply the industry is advancing at a fast pace, but on the other hand, the regulators are really trying to keep up with it and not putting burdensome regulations out there, strangulating if a for uh, I should perhaps find a different phrase there, but just not being supportive enough for the industry. On the contrary, what we see here is very positive, and it's not just in one location. We see this as a generic wish from the regulators to be supportive for industry. And I think that this is a very good development, not least for us as patients.
I do. I think they're encouraging innovation. And I don't want I mean to imply that they haven't encouraged innovation before, but this is not the traditional kind of manufacturing we're used to. And so I think the understanding of how these biologics work, some of these more advanced therapies, is critical in encouraging that innovation. So I see these steps being taken across the board as a very positive reflection of what the regulators and the compendia are thinking about it, and they're taking it seriously and trying to get those life-saving procedures and medicines to the patient.
So what we can say here in conclusion is, yes, it's great that people notice these publications by the agencies, by the pharmacopoeias, etc. And there is real encouragement to please engage. If you just write in your comments, your ideas, it will be read for sure.
Great. Thank you, Siegfried.
Thank you, so. Till next time.
Till next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Ask the Expert. If you have a question that you would like to pose to our experts, please send it to ptprojects@mmhgroup.com. We hope to see you again next time.